Imagine this. You're lying in bed, lights out, half asleep, when suddenly from somewhere inside your house, you hear your name being called. It's a voice you know, your sister's, your mom's, your best friend's. You're alone. Or at least, you thought you were. Tonight, I'm going to share 6 terrifying real Home Alone stories. Moments where ordinary people found themselves trapped in nightmare scenarios, stalked, hunted, or confronted by something, or someone, they couldn't explain. Some of these stories end with relief, some with horror, and some remain unsolved to this day. But let's start with a man who was sure he was hearing things, until he realized the nightmare was real. It was a Friday night. My sister had texted earlier, "Staying at Mike's tonight, see you tomorrow?" That meant the entire downstairs apartment, her living room, her bedroom, her little kitchen, would stay empty. I thought I didn't mind. I made dinner around 8 p.m., just some leftover pasta, then settled on the couch with a beer and queued up a horror movie. My part of the house is basically an open loft. The living room flows into the dining space and kitchen, no walls to block it off. The couch sits in the middle, TV in front, darkness pooling behind. At first, I didn't notice the dark space creeping up behind me. But about 20 minutes in, as the music in the movie built, I felt it, the sense that someone could be standing back there watching me. Every now and then, I'd glance over my shoulder. Just the faint shapes of the dining chairs, the countertop, the empty air. Get a grip, I told myself. But the feeling kept creeping up my spine. It wasn't even about what was on the screen anymore. It was the silence of the house beyond the TV speakers. When the credits finally rolled, I felt the tension drain out of me. It was late, a little past midnight. I got up, stretched, brushed my teeth, turned off the TV. The second the screen went black, the living room felt 10 times darker. I switched off the overhead lights too, leaving only the dim glow from the hallway as I made my way to bed. My bedroom door clicked shut behind me. The house fell silent, so silent I could hear my own breathing. I remember drifting off almost immediately, exhausted. But it didn't last. Sometime later, maybe 2 hours, maybe less, I jolted awake. At first I couldn't figure out why. I blinked into the darkness, heart pounding from some half-remembered dream. Then I heard it. Faint. Downstairs. But familiar. My sister's voice. It sounded muffled, like she was inside the house but behind a wall. She was saying something I couldn't quite catch. My mind was foggy with sleep. I checked my phone. 1:03 a.m. I listened, straining to hear. The voice came again, a little clearer this time, still sounding exactly like her. Part of my brain protested. She told you she was at Mike's. She wouldn't be home. But the tired part of me clung to the simplest answer. She must have come home early. Maybe she's locked out or something happened. I threw on a hoodie, stepped into the hallway, and flipped on the light. "Hey," I called out, voice cracking. "What's going on?" No answer, just silence. I made my way to the top of the stairs. From below, faint and unmistakable, I heard my name. "Tom?" Her voice sounded strained, almost urgent. My heart skipped. I couldn't see anything past the dark stairwell, but the voice felt wrong somehow. Too flat, too cold. "Are you okay?" I called down. Still nothing. I started down the steps, bare feet cold against the wooden stairs. Halfway down, I remembered the light switch in the foyer. I reached for it, fumbling in the dark. The bulb flickered to life, slowly brightening. The downstairs living room came into view. Empty. Couch untouched. TV off. The small kitchen counter clean. "Sis," I said, quieter now. Silence. I walked through her living room, heart hammering, peered into the kitchen. Nothing. Her bedroom door stood slightly ajar. I pushed it open with my foot, expecting to see her standing there. But the room was empty. The bed perfectly made. I stood there, breathing hard, trying to make sense of it. Then, behind me, from somewhere deeper in the room, I heard it again. "Tom?" My blood went cold. The voice was exactly like hers, but there was something hollow in it, like an echo. No emotion. No breath behind the words. I spun around. Nothing. "Where are you?" I shouted, voice shaking. No answer. I stepped back toward the door, every part of me wanting to run upstairs. Then something heavy fell in the bedroom, a dull thump like a box or a book hitting the floor. I froze. Just moments before, I'd been staring right at that spot. Nothing had been there to fall. I backed out of the room, keeping my eyes fixed on the shadows. Up the stairs in seconds, heart racing, lungs burning. I slammed my bedroom door, locked it, pressed my back against it. For a few moments, all I could hear was my heartbeat, deafening in the quiet. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone and called my sister. One ring. Two. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same. I texted her, "Are you home? I heard you downstairs. Where are you?" No reply. I spent the rest of the night in my room, every floorboard creak in the house sounding like footsteps. Every shadow on the wall felt alive. At some point, exhaustion won. I fell into a fitful sleep. When I woke, the sunlight streaming through the blinds almost felt surreal. I checked my phone. 3 texts from her. "Hey, just woke up. Why did you call at 1 a.m.? Is everything okay? Still at Mike's. Won't be home till later." I called her immediately. She picked up, groggy. "What's going on? You weren't here last night?" "No, I told you I was at Mike's." "Why?" I went downstairs to her room. The bed was still perfectly made. Nothing had fallen on the floor, not a single thing out of place. It was like nothing had happened. I've tried to tell myself I imagined it, that I must have been half dreaming, caught in sleep paralysis, or hallucinating from the movie. But here's what keeps me awake at night. I've lived in this house for years. I know what my sister's voice sounds like when she calls my name. That night, it was her voice. Exactly. And if it wasn't her, what was it? They say the worst kind of fear is the kind that crawls up on you slowly, the kind that starts as an itch at the back of your mind and turns into a pounding drum in your chest. I was 14 when I first felt that kind of fear. It was a Saturday night. My mom worked nights as a nurse, pulling 12-hour shifts that ended at sunrise. My older brother, 17 then, was out with his friends like he usually was on weekends. That left me alone in the house. I'd gotten used to it, or at least I thought I had. Being the youngest meant a lot of nights spent by myself, telling myself it was no big deal. Just the creaks and groans of an old house settling. Just the wind rattling the windows. But that night was different. Earlier that evening, I'd had a girl over, Molly. We weren't exactly dating, but we liked each other. We watched a movie in the living room, shared some chips, talked about nothing and everything. She left around 10 p.m. Her parents didn't like her being out late, and honestly, neither did I. Once the front door closed behind her, the silence that returned felt heavier than before. I tried to shake it off. Went up to my room, turned on the TV, put on a rerun of some comedy show. My room faced the backyard. Right outside on the deck were 4 old patio chairs. We never really used them, but they were always there, lined up like quiet sentinels watching over the yard. It was late, past midnight. The house was still, save for the soft glow of the TV screen and the occasional buzz of my phone. That's when I heard it. A scraping sound, faint but unmistakable. Metal legs dragging across wooden boards. I muted the TV and strained to listen. Silence. Then again, slower this time, as if someone was deliberately dragging one of the patio chairs. I got up, stepped over to the window and pulled the curtain aside. My heart jumped into my throat. There, sitting in the chair closest to the window, was someone. A man. He sat perfectly still, head tilted slightly upward, staring directly at me. The porch light wasn't on, and the only illumination came from my TV and the moon, so his features were mostly in shadow. But I could see enough. Short dark hair, a long face, slouched posture. For a second, my brain scrambled to make sense of it. Molly? No, impossible. This was a grown man, not a girl my age. A prank? But who would do that? None of my friends even lived close. I pressed my forehead to the glass, squinting. His head moved, following my motion. He was definitely looking at me. Hello? I called out, voice cracking. He didn't reply. His shoulders began to tremble slightly, like he was chuckling silently. I let go of the curtain and stumbled backward, heart racing. I grabbed my phone, texted my friend group. Is anyone messing with me? There's a guy outside my window. Replies came quickly. Dude, what? No man, are you serious? Call the cops. I didn't. For some reason, the idea of dialing 911 felt impossible, like it would make things worse. After a minute, I forced myself to look again. He was still there, still staring. I could see the faint movement of his chest as he breathed, slow and steady. Go away, I yelled through the glass. No response. Just that slight shiver of his shoulders, laughter without sound. I turned off the TV to kill the light, hoping he couldn't see me anymore. Sat on my bed, knees pulled up to my chest, phone gripped so tightly my knuckles turned white. In the darkness, every sound felt amplified. The hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the ticking of the clock, my own heartbeat roaring in my ears. Minutes crawled by. I kept telling myself he had to be gone by now. No one would sit there staring for this long. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. I crept back to the window, staying low. Lifted the curtain just enough to peek. He was still there. But now his head was tilted slightly to the side, as if he was examining me or maybe enjoying my fear. I couldn't see his eyes, but somehow I felt them on me. Please leave. I shouted louder this time. Still nothing. Then, in the quiet, I heard something else. A faint whistling. It was coming from him, like a laugh that turned into wheezing. The skin on my arms prickled. I backed away again, breathing hard. I sat at the top of the stairs, trying to hear if he was moving, if he might be coming around to the door. For a while, there was only silence. Then, the faint sound of the backyard gate squeaking open. My breath caught. I strained to listen. The footsteps moved slowly, deliberately. Then came the sound of the back door handle being rattled. He was trying to get in. I froze. He jiggled the handle, then pushed against the door. It creaked under the pressure but didn't open. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I tiptoed back to my room, closed the door as softly as I could, and pressed my ear to it. Silence. Then, a few seconds later, the front door handle rattled too. He'd walked around the house. The front door shook under his weight. He pushed once, twice, then stopped. I waited, breath held. Minutes dragged by. Nothing. Eventually, the silence returned, heavy and suffocating. I stayed in my room, afraid to even look out the window. I kept telling myself, maybe he left. But what if he didn't? What if he was just waiting, hidden behind the corner of the house? I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have dozed off near dawn. The light woke me. I ran downstairs immediately. The backyard was empty. The chair he'd sat in was slightly turned, angled toward my window, just as I remembered. I checked the back door. The handle had faint smudges like dirty fingerprints. When my mom got home, I told her everything. She was furious I hadn't called 911. In hindsight, I don't know why I didn't. Maybe part of me thought if I ignored it, it would go away. I never saw that man again. But every time I look out into a dark backyard, I remember that night. That silent laughter. The way he sat there as if he had all the time in the world. And the horrible realization that no matter how safe you feel inside your home, if someone wants to watch you, they can. And sometimes they do. Some nights, everything changes in a single phone call. I was 10 years old and it was a Friday night like any other. Back then, my world was pretty small. Video games, school, the occasional fight with my older brother, and trying to keep my 5-year-old sister from messing with my toys. Our house wasn't big, but it always felt full. Laughter, yelling, footsteps echoing up and down the stairs. Until that night. It was around 8 p.m. I was in my room upstairs, sitting cross-legged on the floor, controller in hand, fully immersed in a Star Wars game. The music, the lightsaber sound effects, they drowned out everything else. Then, from downstairs, I heard something that made my hands go numb on the controller. My mother crying. Not just crying, sobbing, raw and frantic. I paused the game, heart racing. I'd never heard her like that. Not even close. My feet moved before I could think. I opened my bedroom door and ran to the top of the stairs. Down in the living room, my mom stood with the phone pressed to her ear, shoulders shaking. My dad stood next to her, trying to comfort her, his hand on her back. I couldn't hear the words, but the tone was enough to freeze me in place. "Mom?" I called softly. She didn't look up. Then, finally, she hung up the phone. Her face was pale, her eyes red. "It's your brother," she said, voice breaking. "He was hit by a car." The words felt unreal, like hearing them through thick glass. My brother, 14, had gone out with friends, probably riding his bike, maybe crossing a busy street too fast. They didn't tell me much. All I knew was he was at the hospital and his leg was broken. But in that moment, all I could see was the panic on my mother's face. They scrambled to get coats, shoes, car keys. My little sister was still in her room, probably playing with dolls, unaware of what had happened. My dad hesitated for a second, looking at me. "Can you stay home, champ?" he asked. I nodded. At 10 years old, it felt like a serious responsibility. Stay home, keep the house safe, wait for them to come back. They took my sister with them. She was too young to be left behind. The door closed behind them. Suddenly, the house felt wrong. Empty. I went back upstairs, turned on my game again, trying to drown out the silence. But every few minutes, I'd pause and listen, hoping to hear the car returning, or the familiar sound of my brother stomping up the stairs. Instead, there was nothing. Just the ticking clock in the hall. An hour passed. Maybe 2. At some point, I got tired of the game. Turned it off, crawled into bed, and played my Game Boy under the covers. The small screen glowed in the darkness, and the tiny bleeps and music felt like company. Then I heard it. The front door opening. Relief flooded me. They were back. Maybe my brother was with them. Maybe the doctor said he'd be okay. I dropped the Game Boy onto the blanket, climbed out of bed, and opened my door. The upstairs hallway was dark. I stepped out, peered over the banister. In the living room below, the lights were off, but there were people standing there. 3 figures. Tall, unmoving. I froze. For a split second, my brain tried to explain it away. It's mom and dad, and someone helping them? But no, the posture was wrong. The silence was wrong. And even in the dim light I could see, these weren't my parents. My breath caught in my throat. I backed away slowly, step by step, until I reached my bedroom door. My hand shook as I turned the knob, praying it wouldn't creak. I slipped inside, pushed the door closed. The faint click of the latch sounded impossibly loud. I didn't know what to do. Call the police? I didn't have a cell phone. The house phone was downstairs, with them. All I could think of was hiding. My closet was small, crammed with boxes of toys, bags of old clothes, and jackets hanging on a low rail. I opened the door as quietly as I could and stepped inside, wedging myself behind a stack of boxes. The smell of cardboard and old shoes filled my nose. I crouched there, trying to slow my breathing. Outside, I could hear faint footsteps moving up the stairs. One step. Pause. Another step. My heart slammed so hard against my ribs I thought it would burst. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs, then moved toward my room. The doorknob turned. The door opened. Silence. I didn't dare look. I kept my head down, staring into the darkness, willing myself to disappear. I heard the soft scrape of shoes on carpet, then the rustle of my bed covers being touched, as if someone was checking if I was there. The footsteps stopped. A few seconds of absolute stillness. Then the closet door opened. Light spilled in. I held my breath so completely it hurt. I stayed perfectly still, pressed behind the boxes. The door stayed open for what felt like forever. 20 seconds? 30? To a terrified 10-year-old, it felt like hours. Then finally the door swung shut. The footsteps moved away. I heard them walk back down the stairs. I didn't move. Not for minutes. Maybe not for an hour. I waited until I heard the front door slam. Even then, I stayed hidden, too afraid to come out. Eventually, exhaustion won. I opened the closet door, blinking into the dark room. Tiptoed to the window. Outside, the driveway was empty. The street was quiet. I didn't dare go downstairs. I stayed in my room, sitting on the floor, knees hugged to my chest. It was past 2 a.m. when I heard the car pull into the driveway. The front door opened. My mom's voice, "We're home." I ran downstairs, nearly tripping on the steps. They looked exhausted. My brother wasn't with them. He had to stay overnight at the hospital. But my relief at seeing them was so overwhelming, I nearly cried. Then they saw the front door. It was slightly ajar. My dad's eyes narrowed. "Did you open this?" he asked. I shook my head. They walked through the house, checking rooms. Some of our electronics were missing. The DVD player, my dad's old laptop, a few other things. It was a robbery. We found out later the hospital had called during the chaos, and in the rush to leave, my parents had forgotten to lock the front door. An open invitation to whoever was out there that night. But what keeps me awake sometimes isn't the thought of what they took. It's that moment, standing silently in the closet, barely hidden behind boxes. And the terrible possibility that the person who opened that door might have seen me, might have chosen to leave me there, or might not have seen me at all, and I only survived by blind luck. At 10 years old, I learned how fast safety can vanish. All it takes is a phone call, a forgotten lock, and a few silent footsteps in the dark. Some stories start with a bang. Mine started with a whisper. It was July of 2013. I was 17, living with my parents in Newark, Ohio, a quiet town where nothing seemed to happen. Our house sat on a little back road with thick woods just behind our backyard. In summer, the trees grew so dense that at night, it turned into an inky black wall. It always made me uneasy. That week, my parents were gone. A friend of my mom's, Patty, who was pretty well off, had paid for a trip, and they invited my parents along. Just like that, I was left alone for 7 days. I told myself it'd be fun. No rules, no nagging, no one telling me to turn my music down. But deep down, I wasn't as brave as I liked to act. The first 2 nights were fine. I stayed up late playing Xbox, watched movies until dawn, ate junk food, slept past noon. Sometimes I'd step out onto the big wooden deck to get some fresh air. The deck overlooked our backyard, the pool, and the pond. Even then, I kept glancing at the dark line where the yard met the woods. It always felt like something could be standing there, just out of sight. It was Thursday. Around 10 p.m., I stepped outside to the deck. I lit up a joint. Yeah, I shouldn't have, but it helped me relax. Music played softly from my speaker, just loud enough to keep the night from feeling too quiet. That's when I heard it. A voice, faint, from deep in the woods. "Hey, over here." I froze, joint halfway to my lips. The voice didn't call again. At first I tried to brush it off. Maybe kids messing around. Maybe an echo of someone talking far away. I turned the music back up. A few minutes later I heard it again. This time clearer. "Hey, over here, we need help." The voice was low. Definitely a man. Not old, but not a teenager either. And it sounded wrong. Flat. Almost rehearsed. My stomach tightened. My first thought was, could someone really be stuck? But why would anyone be that deep in the woods behind my yard? And why at night? Then it got worse. The voice called out again, louder this time. "Straight in front of you, please come help us." I realized the voice was aimed directly at me. I knew I was there. It saw me. I stepped to the edge of the deck, peering into the darkness. I couldn't see anything beyond the first line of trees. Some stupid part of me thought, maybe I should go check. I climbed down the steps from the deck, walked onto the grass, phone in hand. "Where are you?" I called. Instant reply, as if he'd been waiting. "Right in front of you." "I see you." My skin prickled. "Are you alone?" I asked. No answer. The silence felt heavier than the words. That's when it clicked. If they could see me, why couldn't I see them? If they needed help, why not walk closer? Why keep hiding in the dark? I stopped walking. Then I did the only thing my instincts screamed at me to do. I backed up, step by step. The voice didn't call again. I climbed back onto the deck, heart pounding. Stood there staring into the woods. For a few minutes, nothing. Then I saw a faint movement behind the pool. The top of a head, dark hair barely catching the porch light. Someone was crouched behind the pool wall, watching me. I couldn't see his face, just the shape low to the ground. I backed away, opened the sliding door, and stepped into the house. Locked the door behind me. I closed the blinds on the big window that faced the backyard. Heart still hammering. Then it happened. An explosive, violent banging on the glass. So loud the floor seemed to vibrate. "Help!" the voice screamed. A harsh, cracked scream, like someone on the edge of madness. I yelled back, voice shaking. "Get the F away. The police are coming." I shouted it over and over, hoping it sounded convincing. The banging stopped. Then laughter. Low, raspy, like a smoker's laugh. After a few seconds, the laughter faded. No more banging. No more voices. I stayed near the window, listening. The backyard fell back into stillness. You'd think I'd call 911, but my hands wouldn't move. It was like my brain refused to act, frozen between disbelief and terror. Instead, I sat on the living room floor, back to the couch, staring at the curtained window, listening for footsteps, for whispers, for anything. Eventually, exhaustion and weed did what fear couldn't. I dozed off, head resting against my arm. When I woke, morning light spilled through the curtains. I cautiously peeked outside. The backyard was empty. The pool water perfectly still. No sign of footprints or anything out of place. Was it one person? I'll never know. What did they want? To scare me? To lure me into the woods? Something worse? Sometimes I wonder if I would have gone, if I hadn't been high. Would I have walked straight into the trees, phone light searching the undergrowth, and found what? Or who? That night taught me something I still believe. If someone really needs help, they won't hide in the shadows. And if you hear a voice calling from the darkness, you'd better think twice before answering. Some people say you're never truly alone in your own home. I didn't believe that until the day I learned how true it was. I was 17 when my parents left for a week-long trip, something they almost never did. An old friend had invited them, and I waved them off from the front porch, thinking only of late-night gaming, junk food, and sleeping in. But as the sun set that day, the emptiness of the house grew louder. It was a warm afternoon. To burn off nerves, I took my basketball and went outside to shoot hoops in the driveway. The house loomed behind me, silent except for the creak of an upstairs window I'd left cracked open to let air in. As I dribbled and shot, I glanced up at the window. My heart skipped. Someone was there. A woman standing perfectly still. She had dark hair hanging messily to her shoulders, her face half hidden by the window's glare. And she was watching me. For a second, my mind refused to accept it. It had to be my sister, I thought, except my sister didn't live with us anymore. My mom? Impossible, she'd already left. And then the woman moved. She stepped back from the window, melting into the darkness of the room. The ball rolled across the driveway as I dropped it. I sprinted to the front door, unlocked it, and charged upstairs, calling out, "Hello? Who's there?" My bedroom door was open. So was the guest room. So was the bathroom. All empty. Downstairs next. Living room, kitchen, closets. Nothing. Maybe I'd imagined it. The sun playing tricks. My reflection catching in the window. But deep down I knew better. I went through the house, double-checking every lock, every window. Then, just to be sure, I yelled, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "Whoever's here, get out. I've called the police." The silence that answered was worse than any shout. When darkness settled, it brought with it a knot of fear. I checked the closets again. I looked under the beds. Nothing. Finally, exhausted, I turned off the light and crawled into bed. The hum of the fan above me blurred the quiet, but my eyes refused to close. At some hour past midnight, I heard it. A sound from behind me. A shift. A scrape of fabric against the floor. I turned my head, and there she was. A woman, pale and hollow-eyed, was crawling out from under my bed. She rose, slow as smoke, until she stood over me. For a moment I couldn't even scream. Then my body moved. I launched out of bed, slammed into her, and we fell to the floor. Her nails raked my arm, leaving trails of burning pain. I pinned her, shouting, "Who are you?" Through the front door's window, the porch light caught a movement. My neighbor, he'd heard the shouting. He pushed inside, saw us struggling, and rushed to help. Together, we forced her up and out of the hallway. She was yelling, spitting curses, threatening to kill us both. She smelled like dirt and old sweat, her clothes rumpled and filthy. When the police arrived, an officer immediately recognized her. Her name was Karen. Known locally for breaking into houses, sleeping in basements, and worse. They handcuffed her, and she kept screaming until they shoved her into the back of the patrol car. My neighbor stayed until my parents came home the next day. We found my blood on the carpet and the window she'd used to sneak in. For days I kept checking under my bed before sleeping. Weeks later, the scars from her scratches healed, but the fear never really did. The thought that truly chills me? She'd been inside my house the whole time, watching, waiting, and if I hadn't seen her at the window, who knows how the night might have ended. Some things your eyes see before your brain believes them. That day it happened in a single glance. I was 23, still living with my parents, though they were out together that afternoon. It was early evening, the sun low enough to throw shadows across the yard. I was shooting hoops alone, sweat dripping, the thump of the ball echoing off the driveway. It was so normal, so routine. Until it wasn't. As the ball bounced away, I looked up at the second-floor window and saw her. A woman, mid-30s, maybe older. Face half hidden behind the glass, hair tangled. Just staring. My brain fumbled for logic. Mom? No, she wasn't home. My sister? She'd moved out. So who? Adrenaline overruled thought. I dashed through the front door, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. Upstairs first. Every door flung open. Bedrooms, closets, bathroom. Empty. Downstairs next. Living room. Kitchen. Basement. No one. Maybe she'd run out the back. Or maybe I'd imagined it. But my gut screamed no. I stood in the hall and yelled, voice shaking. Get out of my house. I'm calling the police. My own echo was the only answer. That night, sleep refused to come. Every floorboard creak felt like footsteps. Every shadow felt like her. At some point, exhaustion dragged me down. I woke in the dark to a sound. A slow shift of weight on the floor. I turned and saw her. She was rising from under my bed. Slow. Silent. For a moment, our eyes locked. Then she lunged. I pushed forward, adrenaline drowning out fear. We crashed onto the floor. She clawed at my arms, snarling words I couldn't understand. Blood ran warm down my wrist. The doorbell rang. My neighbor, hearing the commotion, burst in. Together we forced her up, wrestled her to the door. She spat curses, twisted, scratched. Within minutes, flashing lights cut through the darkness. Officers pulled her away, still screaming. One recognized her. Karen, he said. Not again. She'd been in my house long enough to hide. Long enough to wait. And if I hadn't seen her, just by chance, I might never have known until it was too late. Even now, years later, I check under the bed before I sleep. Because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't in your imagination. They're already inside. Watching. They say home is where you're safest. But what if it's where the real nightmares begin? Tonight, we've heard stories of shadows at the window, voices calling from the woods, and strangers hiding where we'd never think to look. What makes these stories truly terrifying isn't just what happened. It's how close each one came to ending much worse. A single choice, a locked door, a glance over the shoulder, that thin line between safety and horror. And maybe that's why these tales stay with us. Because deep down we all know, no matter how familiar the walls or how strong the locks, the unknown can still find a way in. So tonight, when you turn off the lights, remember, that creak in the floorboards might not just be the house settling. That faint voice outside might not be the wind. Sometimes the scariest stories aren't told around a campfire. They unfold quietly when we're all alone and nobody's watching. Sleep well.